Good morning, and thank you for joining me on this short video. It's about a little topic which you might think at first glance is quite irrelevant and bizarre and a bit out there. It's about defending against ethno-nationalism. One of the things that people bandy around today is they call each other fascists or Nazis. And it's very, very rare in Britain, certainly, to have extreme right-wing views. It's very rare to actually see or hear fascists speaking. However, over the last couple of years, the far-right movement in Britain has rebranded itself. It used to be in the 1970s and 80s the National Front. The National Front has metamorphosed into all sorts of organisations and subgroups, and they've fallen out with each other and so on and so forth. But the idea of ethno-nationalism and where it's basically around it's England for the English, and it's how you define that. And that's where it can get very, very awkward. And in my explanation of this, I've given one example, actually, one that I know quite a bit about, which is Liverpool. For example, if you had an ethno-nationalist government, they would say, well, anybody who is indigenously British is allowed to stay and everybody else will go. And that means people of colour. So, for example, in the early part of the 1800s, when slavery was made illegal, I think it was 1807, it was made illegal by the work of William Wilberforce and others. Some of the freed slaves became seafarers. They were paid just like their white counterparts, but many of them, we're not talking thousands, we're talking probably scores and maybe hundreds of African sailors came and lived in Liverpool. And that was true of the Chinese community as well. And Liverpool has had a small African or Afro-Caribbean population, grown recently, of course, with the very large rise in immigration since the Tony Blair years and beyond. So that's 1997 to 2025 when I'm recording this video. But ethno-nationalism would say that the descendants of black sailors who maybe had settled in Liverpool in the early 1800s should be deported back to their countries of origin. Now, I have to say from the outset, I completely reject that idea and that policy. My own antecedents, on one side, my mother was from Ireland, Southern Ireland, sort of the Roscommon area, going up to the borders of present-day Northern Ireland, that sort of area. And on my father's side, they were from Eastern Europe, and they were Polish immigrants into the United Kingdom I believe in the 1850s or the 1860s. And they came here for economic reasons in that time. And ethno-nationalism would have me deported either back to Ireland or back to Poland. And this is a bizarre, highly bizarre, and actually very cruel form of nationalism. And it is very closely related to that ultra-nationalism that we know as fascism. And going back to my earlier claim about people bandying the word around fascists and Nazis, there aren't many in Britain, thank the good Lord for that. However, it is worth noting that people who say we want England for the English, Scotland for the Scottish, Welsh, Wales for the Welsh, Northern Ireland for the Northern Irish, there are lots of historical inconsistencies there. And if you propose ethno-nationalism, as some people do, you are proposing something that is really very horrible and very, very nasty. I'm going to leave it there because that's just something that I picked up on the internet, where we are getting the rise of some of these extreme right-wing groups, and they've reformed, so you don't get National Front marches like you did in the 1970s, but they've reformed, and it's a sort of soft nationalism, but it's still quite a horrible form of nationalism. I call myself an English or British patriot, and I am proud of that. I haven't got onto the topic of illegal immigration, and I actually am quite hard on that, but that's about illegal contemporary immigration into this country. But I'm really calling out the ethno-nationalists or the ultra-nationalists, who are really basically fascists and Nazis dressed up in a party dress. Okay, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I'm sorry, it's a bit of an obscure sort of topic, but I think it needs to be called out, especially in the England and the Britain of May, June 2025. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.